Good morning, good day to everybody, good day to all you companies, exporters, trade experts. Welcome to our webinar today. Welcome to all of you, and thank you all for tuning in and connecting with us today as we're going to talk about how to grow your exports, your sales, brand, and business in Canada using online business development tools. We're delighted you could all be here today. Now, just while the last of you are logging on, just a little bit of housekeeping. So today's webinar is going to be 45 minutes long. So we have left some time to close for Q&A, and we would love to have your questions. So please do pop them into the chat box. We have someone creating the questions, and we'll get back to you at the end with a Q&A time. And there will also be 4 polls during this webinar. So again, we would love you to participate in that. Just get your mouse and just click on the response that best fits for you on the polls. And at the end of the webinar, we're going to have a very, very brief survey. We would be really appreciative if you could fill it out. It's a very, very short survey. It's about 1 minute long, that's all. But I really should introduce ourselves before we go much further. So let's also just spend a moment and introduce ourselves today. So my name is Susanna Hardy, and I'm Chief Content Officer at IBT Online. As I said, I'm delighted to be here today to talk about Canada and online business development tools. My job in terms of content officer is to get involved in anything that regards content that's from keywords to search engine optimization to written content, anything at all. And I'm really delighted to be joined today by two of our colleagues, Samantha and Andrew. Both Samantha, Senior Business Development Manager, and Andrew, also a Business Development Manager. Both of them are absolutely digital natives and have a wide experience of the online world, of online tools, of helping companies go international using those tools, and of course also of working in Canada. Now, a brief word just about who we are as a company. IBT Online, that stands for International Business Technologies, and we've been around for quite a while, especially in this online space since 2002. We're a US company, we're private, and but we work with a lot of US states, and we'll talk a bit about that later as well. We've designed something called the Online Global Programs in a variety of different US states to help exporters get access to online business development tools like websites and things like that. So really, I guess our unique selling point, I like to say, is really that we are 100% focused on online tools, like websites, like online marketing, like e-commerce, and we're 100% focused on the international world. So that's who we are, and our website is ibt.onl. We have decided to divide up today into 4 big sections and to try and figure out to try and explain to you and figure out how, what it means to have a Canadian website and online business development tools. Why should you have them? What do they look like? Give us some examples. And then the final section about some helping hands, some takeaways, and hopefully your questions and answers. Before I pass the microphone on to Andrew, I wanted also to say there are 2 handouts in today's webinar. There's a Canada online environment infographic and also an infographic on Mexico, because we're doing a webinar on Mexico quite soon, and I guess it's also just highlights this USMCA, trade agreement, and what that, the fact that we've seen a lot more interest from US exporters into the Canadian and the Mexican markets at the moment. I want to reflect that also in these webinars that we're doing at the moment, Canada, and we have one coming up on Mexico. So you should be able to just grab those infographics on the right-hand side of your screen and then download them. As I said, they're the sort of online environment infographic of Canada and of Mexico. Just a brief word also about how important Canada is for US exporters. Typically, it is the first market that a US company will test the waters internationally. They'll say, okay, Canada, they speak the same language, at least some of them do, so they try that. But Canada is the single largest export market for the United States. Canada buys more goods from the US than China, Japan, and the UK combined. There's a little sort of snippet that I quite like. Every day of the year, 400,000 people and $2 billion worth of goods and services cross the Canada-US border. So that's, I think, shows you just how important this is as a market. So now let's turn to Andrew to talk to us a little bit about why exporters need Canadian localized websites. Andrew?
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Susanna. And hello to everyone. I'm so excited to be here and to be talking to you about our neighbors to the north and why exporters need to be using Canadian localized websites. So to kick things off, throughout this pandemic, increasingly we've been meeting with a lot more exporters and listening to some of their main priorities. We've arrived at the conclusion that there's 4 big concerns in the front of their mind right now. Obviously, companies will be concerned about their employees, concerned about their cash flow and their costs, and maintaining a supply chain. But the biggest and the most concern that we've seen, and the majority of the discussion that revolves around generating new sales and growing their business ultimately. So this is exactly what we'll be focusing on today. And we're going to be using our expertise to describe the online tools that you can use to grow your business online. Now let's start with looking at the big picture of Canada Online. Canada is plugged in. 35 million Canadians, or it comes out to about 94% of the population, use the internet, and it's not just for the occasional Google search. Canadians are spending about six hours of their time every day online. And that's way more than the US, than us here in the US. With us Americans, we're only using about 82% of our online daily. I'm sorry, 82% of us Americans are online daily. A little surprising, but true. Here's another thing that we can highlight here. Canadians love their mobile phones. 96% of Canadians have a mobile phone, and of that, almost all of them are smartphones. So this means that Canadians can stay plugged in anytime and anywhere. And this is again something that showcases how Canada is much more mobile enabled than us Americans, and it continues to grow and grow. And it's growing. Just throughout 2019 alone, there were 947,000 additional Canadians who went online, which means that which comes out to about 2.8% of their population, and that was just last year. And of that 947,000, 912,000 went online and immediately went active on social media platforms. And this growth has shown no signs of slowing down, especially with the effects of COVID-19. This new online world we face is something that we have to adapt to. So now we're going to turn to exactly what these Canadians are doing online. And that's communicating. And specifically, it's going to be communication on different social media platforms. Again, COVID-19 has exponentially grown this market, and to no surprise, there's been a major impact on the people that are now working remote and working from home. We now see that remote work is affecting the way that people and businesses are communicating with each other, with their employees, and with their prospects. There's about 67% of the Canadian population that use social media, and of that 67%, there's a 96% of individuals that are accessing social media on mobile phones and mobile devices. Basically, this is a tool that businesses should take advantage of, especially when you look at the average time that's spent on digital media in Canada. It comes out to about 4.5 hours per day. And that's an individual that's spending time on social media on their phones in Canada. All this is really good news for you companies, for exporters, for partners. It means that you as a company know exactly where your clients and prospects are going to be, know exactly where they're spending their time, and know exactly where they're going to be buying their products. They're all online and they're all on social media. They're going to be using this communication for work purposes as well. There's about 31% of Canadian internet users that say they go on the internet to develop professional relationships, to promote their business, and then make purchases for their businesses and for their personal. The key takeaway here is that you can use this and take advantage of it. Online is not just for B2C companies and the promotion to the end users, it's also for B2B and even B2G too. As we go into the next slide, online is for everyone. Ultimately, I just wanted to include this slide because many of the US exporters that are going to Canada are in that B2B space, in that realm. And sometimes those B2B companies don't pay enough attention to their online presence, because they can suffer from something what I like to call perfectly engineered syndrome. And what is this, you might ask? Well, when you think of this, it's when you think deep down that your product is the best in the industry and that it's just going to sell itself. Unfortunately, now that companies are not meeting face to face and typical sales avenues like trade shows or trade missions are now canceled, you need an online presence that will speak to how wonderful your products are and be keyword optimized so that your people can find you online. Also, keep in mind that B2B business, the people who purchase your products or services for their business, do so in a similar way to how they purchase products for themselves and in their personal life. They do the due diligence on your products, they research your company, they research your competitors, and supported by the numbers that you see here. 94% of B2B purchases are researched before contacting a sales rep or a distributor. Or even another one, over 70% of searches start with a generic search, such as CRM software, rather than a search for a specific brand like HubSpot or Salesforce. I also just want to add that the B2B e-commerce is more than 3 times the size of B2C e-commerce. So it's really important that no matter B2B, B2C, B2G, it's very important to get the right online tools. Now with that, I just want to pass it over to Samantha, who's going to be speaking about those online tools that are effective for your business.
Excellent. Thanks, Andrew, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this webinar. So what are these online tools that Andrew keeps mentioning? We like to divide these online tools into 2 interrelated pieces. First is your website, and second is your online marketing. There was a time where it was okay to just have your basic core US domestic website and make sure that your webmaster or your web design company optimized it every now and then, kind of like an annual spring cleaning for the search engine. And it was enough to just publish a blog a year to get ranked on the #1 page in Google. But now that everyone and their mother has a website, things are a lot more competitive. You still need a really good core website, and you still need to do SEO, so those blog posts, updating your content. But now SEO has to be regularly checked and freshened up, so just the 1 blog a year doesn't cut it. You need regular online marketing like structured social media outreach campaigns to make sure you can be found, you can be understood, and you can do business both in the US and internationally, like in Canada. So the key thing to remember about the online world is that it is always searcher-centric. So your company might be producing the best widgets in the world, but if you're not communicating that correctly to search engines, you will simply just not be found. So for all things online, always put your customer in the center. This is essentially what we mean when we talk about a localized presence, whether it's for your website or your marketing or your e-commerce. And the best way to demonstrate this is to understand how global leaders like Google are constructed. So if you have a website company and you want to reach some prospects in Canada, you might think, let me just add just a couple of French pages, or maybe just my English US website will reach them. It'll do the rest. Or yeah, maybe you just think you don't even need to have a special presence for Canada. But unfortunately, that's not the case anymore. Search engines, and here we've taken Google as the main example, but the same thing applies to others around the world like Yandex, Bing, Baidu, and even in nowadays, YouTube, Amazon, Facebook, they're all used like search engines. And all of these platforms, what they have in common is that they are searcher-centric. Google itself has 192 country and regional specific search engines. So a couple of additional pages on your US website will not be viewed as highly relevant to your target audience. So like I mentioned before, you're pretty much invisible. So for example, in Canada, your searcher will be searching in google.ca with their local English and will want to see things like measurements and metric and other things that are highly relevant to the Canadian market, which we'll go over in the next section, so you don't have to worry about that. So think of search engines like Google as lots of country-specific localized search engines. So it'll come up with results that are most relevant to the Canadian searcher. And here's a really great practical example of how country-specific Googles produce results that are relevant to each specific user. So Susanna, who is in the UK, and myself in Miami, we both have dogs that seem to always love to play in the background whenever we have webinars. So we both searched for squeakless dog toys. Logically, Google provided results that were relevant to each user. So I got things I'm very familiar with, like Chewy.com, Amazon.com, and Yahoo, even with a really relevant piece of content. However, Susanna got things I've never even heard of, like barksandbunnies.co.uk and timeforpaws.co.uk, and even amazon.co.uk. So the same search on different Google search engines gave us different results. And you have to keep in mind that translation and keyword research is only one aspect of having a localized site. In order for search engines to find you, you need to make it as easy as possible for that search engine to realize that your website is for that specific market. For example, there are billions of searches a day on Google, and Google has to comb through a search index of literally hundreds of billions of pages that it needs to figure out what is the most relevant to the searcher in literally milliseconds. So to make it easier on Google, you need to localize your website and your marketing. This includes things like hosting within the target market, registering domain names, making sure that it's compliant to their standards, among other things that you see on this list. And in practice, in the next slide, we'll show you how this kind of works in your analytics and how it should show up. This is a great example of how a localized website can work. So if here you have a website that is targeting prospects specifically in Canada, so it's on a .ca, it's hosted in Canada with SEO for the Canadian local market. As you can see, the results for 1 month on this B2B site show that the majority of traffic, so 95%, is from their relevant target market, so Canada. So it shows you how Google thinks that this website is relevant for the Canadian market, and it's barely relevant for other English-speaking markets, even its neighbor, the United States, and also for the UK. And then the image on the right is just a really great example as to how you can even target a specific area, a specific city, or even a specific neighborhood. So in conclusion for this section, why do companies need localized websites? So especially for the Canada market, as Andrew mentioned, Canada is online and the world is online. So everyone that you're trying to get in touch with, including your future prospects, your future distributors, suppliers, partners, employees, everyone is online and they're communicating. So, and now with COVID-19 and people traveling a lot less than they did in the past, this new normal is more online than ever. So you want to make sure that your online presence is reflective of how your business is and how you want to portray it. So by having a localized website for the Canadian market and for your other target markets as well, you'll be able to be found, be understood, and be easier to do business with. That way you can grow your business in your top target markets.
Samantha, thank you so much.
I think no problem.
I'm going to launch a quick poll, if that's okay. Let's launch a quick poll, and here we are. We wanted to ask you all, are you already doing business in Canada? If so, is it via distributors? Is it, are you thinking about it? Are you looking at Canada at all? Do you have in-house distributors? Are you online in Canada? And let me give you a couple of responses here. There's quite a few of you still thinking about it, but I'd say the majority are already doing business in Canada via distributors. So that's great to know. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to close this poll now, and let's see. There we go. Close the poll. And let's continue now and start talking about some of the very direct types of online business development tools that that you can use in Canada that are available in Canada. So I wanted actually to start with a story which is It's actually gone down as one of those stories you have in the Harvard Business Review. Like they use it for case studies with MBA students. It's when the U.S. retailer Target went and went into Canada, and that was they opened their first stores in 2013. Canadians were well familiar with Target already because they shop regularly in the States. They go to the States. They knew Target. They knew of Target. They were excited to see it. So they gave it very much their like, yes, we want to see Target here in Canada. What happened? It was pretty well a disaster from the start. Target did not appreciate the dynamics of doing business in Canada. It underestimated the distances, which meant the supply chains. For example, it also underestimated the sort of cultural and linguistic diversity. Now, Canada, as you know, has two official languages, English and French, although, Quebec recognizes only French. But Canada also has a myriad of other languages from Native Americans, Native Indians, Native Americans, and Inuit. So there's second Canadian market is small, 35 million people, but it's spread over a vast territory, larger than the U.S. So transportation, distribution, logistics became very complicated. In addition to that, Canadian legislations and regulations, for example, on packaging, food products, were not the same as the U.S. and did not have were not well regulated by or researched by Target. Target was really ubiquitous in the States, absolutely, but exporting its brand proved to be a real challenge. They had to translate this brand development and concept to the Canadian market while differentiating itself already from a pretty crowded discount retail area. And it didn't really provide the experience that the Canadians were looking for. And in fact, in the end, Canadians, the credibility was really lost. And in the end, they did a write-down of $5.5 billion US dollars over the space of just 2 years for that. And what's, I think, interesting from our perspective is what they were doing online. Now, I said that they started their stores in 2013. That was a time when Canadians were already very active online and were pretty early adopters of e-commerce. And we'll talk about Canadian e-commerce experience a bit later. But Target did not open an e-commerce right away. They delayed that for 2 years. And then when they did open an e-commerce site, it was not really a localized site either. So that's a sort of a pity in that. So in 2015, they did launch an available site. So Target.ca is the Target Canadian website. That's the top level domain name for Canada for Target. But if a Canadian clicked on that, they were redirected. So there wasn't really a Target.ca. They were just redirected to internationaltarget.com, which was a sort of generic international e-commerce site. Things were not in metric. There was no Canadian dollars. It said it was easy to use, but it only was in English. It wasn't in French at all. There was also no way of telling how much the end price would be until the very last moment of your purchase. And then you'd be slapped with a duty charge and a pretty hefty postal charge, delivery charge. So something that was, if you were, Canadians can be pretty cost conscious, and they would like to research their purchases before buying. So they'd look on this, they'd say, okay, that's a good price, I'll buy that. And then just at the very end, they'd have their price sometimes being doubled. And then it would have to be in US dollars. Again, it ended up in being a very hefty write-down for Target. They did not localize. There was no geolocation either. So in the end, you got redirected to either this internationaltarget.com or a US website in both cases. And again, it was not a good experience for the Canadians. Canadians were disappointed with the in-store experience. They were now pretty disappointed with the with the online experience because of this. So, Target then had to rethink and had to make another write down and rethink the whole thing. So let's talk a little bit. And this has gone down as sort of one of those case studies of localization. Let's talk a little bit about what it means to localize. And Samantha listed some of those main attributes, things of localizing with keywords, with vocabulary. Here's one, just a little example. So if you're in the States and you get, your jogging shoes, what are you going to call them? You're going to call them sneakers. 96% of Americans in the USA call them sneakers. 31% in Canada call them sneakers. 70%, 69% call them runners, which is the English word used in England. So again, if you're in the jogging running shoe business, you better make sure that you have the right keywords. So keywords can be very different, and there's a lot of little differences in the English, and it has to do with English spelling, for example, color or color, center, traveling with 2 L's, that sort of thing, or also vocabulary. But most of all, you need to make sure that your keywords are right for the Canadian market. And this is important when you get onto marketing, because if you're using the wrong keywords, one, you're not well found, so you're not optimized for search engines. And two, if you're running marketing campaigns, you're paying Google for nothing. You're paying Google for those keywords for nothing. So also references, obviously it's metric versus the imperial that you have in the United States. Canadian dollars. Most of all, I think that's what's important is to make sure that Canadians, your buyer personas in Canada, find themselves right away on that Canadian website. So have local testimonials and relevant case studies for the Canadians. So that's what it's in English. Canadian French is quite distinctive, actually much more different than the English is to American English. The French really sort of split off quite a bit earlier and has developed quite differently. 21% of Canadians have called French their mother tongue, and it is a very strong political statement as well. If you have a target market, if your target prospective business market is in Quebec, then you absolutely have to have a French website. It would be, I guess, insulting not to in that sense. So, and there's a lot of difference, I said, between French and the French of Quebec. We have a blog, if anyone wants to pursue that, there's a blog we have on our website about will one French website reach all French markets, which talks to you a little bit about the Quebec and various other French markets that exist around the world. An online absolute prerogative in the Canadian market is that Canada has an online digital compliance law, the Canadian anti-spam legislation, CASL, and that is going towards personal information protection. It's not quite as stringent as GDPR in Europe, but it is going in that general direction. And my guess is, and personally, I think that in 2021, and within 6 months, 12 months, you will see Canada putting more legislation on their online world, making it closer to general data protection regulation of Europe. If you have a website for Canada and you're not CASL compliant, you can risk very heavy fines. So careful on that. Social media in Canada is different from the US use of social media. Andrew mentioned this a little bit. First of all, how mobile-enabled Canadian internet use is, and then how much they interact with social media to business. So we talked about 86% of Canadians interacting with business on social media, and obviously Facebook being the largest, so no surprise there. And you'll find the same list of characters that you would in the USA. I mean, Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, YouTube, and so on. But they're used in a much more dynamic way, and as I said, a much more business-friendly way. I wanted to have a little mention as well about e-commerce. E-commerce, Canadians were early adopters. I said with my target example there. Canadians were early adopters of e-commerce and still have a very vibrant e-commerce market. You can see in some of these numbers, 84%, 88%, very, really pretty, very, very strong presence of e-commerce throughout Canada. But it's a little, as I said, a bit different. They tend to be very cost conscious, and certainly in the B2C world, if you're in that e-commerce B2C world, you'll find that Canadians are very reactive to transportation and delivery cost. Those have to be included into the existing price. They no longer really accept to only have to travel, purchase things in dollars, in US dollars. There's now enough choice for them to be on their Canadian websites. They no longer need to go on to the US equivalent and so on. They would expect to have a Canadian website if you're in the e-commerce space. So watch that carefully. Since COVID, we've seen a seriously big uptick in e-commerce. I guess that's no surprise. The initial forecast is that e-commerce has risen by about 40% on B2C, 40% so far in the first 6 months of 2020 in Canada. And that's 28 million people out of 35 buying online actively in Canada. So it's a very, very vibrant, very large market on that. So then I wanted to pass back to Samantha to tell us a little bit about some examples and case studies of how exporters use localized websites. Samantha?
Excellent. Thanks, Susanna. Yeah, so I wanted to start off with ASI. So ASI is a manufacturing client in North Carolina. And ASI is particularly special because they were very old school in the way that they did business. They loved face-to-face. They loved, the shaking of hands and going to trade shows, going to trade missions. As you can see by the quote, typically 75% of sales involved that sort of old school kind of doing business. So by not being able to travel due to travel restrictions and everything, they had to shift. They had to pivot to something a little bit more modern. So they shifted to online through a brand new US online presence. So the screenshot that you they now have a brand new US website. And also we are localizing their website so that they can do business online and that they can be that modern face of ASI wheels or ASI super abrasives, I'm sorry. So through starting the program, they realized why website globalization or why website localization is so important now more than ever. Moving on to the next slide, we have a Florida company called New England Machinery. And they have a website. They have websites for the U.S., for Canada, and also for Mexico. They wanted to expand their business and further establish their business in those markets. So we actually localized their website for Canada and Mexico. And their main goal was to build brand awareness. They also wanted lead generation, and especially now, because they were also a company who liked to go to trade shows and trade missions, they wanted to stay front of mind for their existing customers and maintain that visibility throughout COVID. So having websites in the US and for their main target markets has really helped them in that. The next case study is a company called Roll-Rite. And they have a ton of international websites with us, including Canada, of course, but also the UK, France, Germany, Netherlands, and others like Norway and Australia. And Roll-Rite is a company that we created websites and have done marketing for them in countries all over the world, as you can see, including Canada. And I want to highlight how they do a lot of marketing in Canada, and you want to make sure that you're really focused. You want to be really focused on the platforms that you're going to choose to market in the Canadian market, and you really need to have a phenomenal idea as to who your buyer persona is. So who is the person that's going to be purchasing from your company in Canada? So when you're really clear on who your buyer persona is and what platforms they're on and what platforms they feel comfortable interacting with other companies, and you want to be really clear on what your goals are on these platforms as well, that's when you can create a really ultra focused strategy for the Canadian market. And that's what we were able to do for Roll-Rite. We supported their online marketing. We did paid search and organic in not only in Canada, but also in Australia, Europe, and the US. And then the last company that I want to focus on is a company called Armor. And Armor is a company in Michigan that has websites in Canada, Mexico, China, India, and Germany actually in the works. And goals for the Canadian market and for their other markets as well was to increase their sales and to distributors. They do a lot of work, so distributors are absolutely, especially when they're entering new markets. So we created a website and they found that they got their ROI back almost immediately. So it just came to show Armor the importance of having a localized website so that they were actually found in the market, not only in Canada, but their other target markets as well, and so that they can be easier to do business with. So that was our main objectives in those markets for Armor. And now moving on to the online global programs. We're going to wrap this up with just a description of the programs, some takeaways from the presentation, and then we'll go into Q&A, which looks like we'll have plenty of time for. So the online global programs, as you can see by this map, and I know we have people from all over the US, we have programs in 25 states that we are a recognized partner for them for the online global program. And in those highlighted states, there is funding available for us to create websites, so a localized presence for Canada, online marketing for Canada, or even beyond, so Mexico, Germany, pretty much any market that you can think of. So there is an established program, but even if you're in a state that's not highlighted, there could be state funding available to use towards our programs. But I also want to highlight, so depending on what your goals are, so maybe as you saw with Armor, maybe you want to find new distributors, maybe you're looking to grow in a new market, so you're looking to expand into Canada. Maybe you just want to grow your international sales or attract B2C customers. Depending on what your goals are, we can tip and tailor your websites accordingly, as you saw in the case studies, to your specific goals. And you can see that in those little check marks. And the programs that we have available are, first off, options A and B. So option A is a 2-market expansion with a limited scope, so 12 web pages and 2,000 words. So by the end of option A, you'll have 2 websites completely localized in your top 2 target markets. So for example, one in German for Germany and one in French for Canada or English for Canada. And these websites will be based off of your US site, but we'll go through a whole localization process, including proper domain names, local hosting, SEO keyword research, industry-specific translators, regulatory compliance, and just so much more. So by having these websites, they'll help you be found and understood and be easier to do business with in your top markets. And then the option B is anything above and beyond the scope of work that you see for option A. So maybe your company is looking for a website redesign, or maybe you want to have a CRM attached in the back with the website. Or maybe you just want one country, but a huge scope of work, so like 50 pages and 30,000 words. Then option B would best suit you. And the budget for option B is completely dependent on the scope of work. But just like option A, there is state funding available for companies to get these international localized websites. So you should definitely check it out.
Samantha, can I interrupt you here for a second? I wanted to ask a quick question of the audience. We've talked about these option A's and option B's, and this possibility of step grants and money available to help out with that. We were wondering, if you wanted to have more information about option A and option B in these localized websites, or if you're thinking about it, and if you'd like us to contact you at all to talk about that, let us know. We're still collecting a couple of responses, but it's pretty interesting. There's a lot. It seems like a lot of appetite, and I think that definitely the possibility of some step grants obviously helps a lot. Right, I think I'm gonna close the poll now. Thank you very much for that, and a very enthusiastic response. Thank you. Right, close the poll there. Go on, Samantha. Let me also. Perhaps you could talk a little bit about options C and marketing and things like that in Canada.
Absolutely. So on the next slide, we have an option for international online marketing to support your website in either Canada or your other top target markets. So through option C, what we aim to do is we aim to use social media marketing, search engine marketing, and reporting and analytics to drive traffic to your localized websites. And I mean, depending on what your goals are, maybe it's lead generation, maybe it's just trust and credibility, maybe you're just looking to grow your presence on these social media platforms. We will adjust our online marketing strategy accordingly, and we will post for you on social media platforms. We will do both the paid and organic ads on search engines like Google, all to help you in your online presence in your main target markets, so including Canada.
Samantha, thanks. I just really quickly ask about that as well, because again, these are programs that have been established with a lot of different U.S. states. So, there's some possibility of getting some step grants for some of the states that we're working with. So again, if you'd like us if you'd like to learn more about it, let us know. And again, thank you very much for that enthusiastic response for that as well. Great to see that. Thank you very much. Right. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now. I've got most of you, so there we go. Thank you very much. There you go, Samantha.
Excellent.
Back to you.
And then, thank you. Yeah, the last option that we have here is option E for e-commerce. So if you're interested in e-commerce, and this can be B2B and also B2C, it doesn't just have to be B2C, but if that's an avenue that you find would really work for your product offering, then we can create an e-commerce platform for your international target markets. And we would create it a separate website, a separate e-commerce platform with a cart, with the appropriate currencies, metrics. What we want is for the person that goes onto your e-commerce platform, and the same goes for your non-e-commerce enabled websites. We want them to feel like they're going to a website that was created by a Canadian company, for example, for the Canadian market. It just resonates with them that well, so they feel really comfortable making a purchase on your website. So we do offer this e-commerce program, and the scope totally depends on how many SKUs you have on your website. So we have options for small, medium, large, and extra large websites. So depending on how many SKUs you have and you want to sell into the Canadian market or other markets as well, that would determine the budget. And all of this information is found on our website on the pop-ups. So you can go on our website, or you can reach out to us, and we would be happy to answer any questions. Oh, and there is, before we go into the poll, sorry, one more thing. There are step grants available for option E as well. So depending on which state where you're located and if you qualify for step grants. So just keep that in mind for e-commerce and also for the other programs.
Right. I launched the poll anyway. That's fine. That's
the next
fine.
poll.
Yeah, next poll. This is the last poll, I promise. But just if you have an interest in the e-commerce side, let us know. And as Samantha was said, there's possibility of some step grants available for the online global programs that we've developed with these various U.S. states. I think I'm going to thank you all very much for replying. We've got a terrific turnout. Thank you all for participating. That's great. Thank you. Right, I'm going to close that last poll. Turn back to Samantha, and maybe you can give us a little bit of some summaries and things before we go to questions.
Yeah, thanks, Susanna. So what we want you guys to take away from this website is that this webinar is that the online world is localized, and you cannot think that Canada specifically is just an extension of the US. They are the important country and market for US exporters, so you want to give it the respect that it deserves. And so by having a localized presence, you will be able to be found in the Canadian market, you can be understood by your Canadian prospects, and you'll be easier to do business with. So in the end, it'll just grow your exports, your sales, and your business in the Canadian market. Oops. Sorry. So we have to stand up because working from home means a barking dog.
That's terrific. That's why you need those squeakless dog toys. Right. Just summarizing then from Samantha, we're looking forward to helping you if we can with online business development tools in the Canadian market. I wanted to highlight finally just a little bit of sharing as well. We're running a whole series of webinars. I know you're all zoomed out, webinared out, but we do have a lot of webinars coming up. We're going to highlight some of these both on e-commerce, on Mexico, on topics that we're finding our companies are really asking a lot of questions at the moment on Canada, on Mexico, on e-commerce, on other markets, and so we're trying to respond as well as we can on the by webinars. And if you have particular requests, then let us know. And with that, I'm going to turn to some questions. We've got time. And one of the very first questions that I'm going to take it, if that's okay, Samantha and Andrew. One of the very first questions we have as well is about the .ca. And there's about half a dozen of you who've asked the same question, so I'm going to try and focus on that. So in the US, in the UK, for example, you'd have yourbusiness.co.uk. That's your domain name, your top level domain name. In the US, it's usually a .com. In Canada, to denote Canada, it's a .ca. Now, buying, or if you're a US company and you want a .ca, that's actually not that easy, because to buy a .ca, you have to be Canadian. You have to have a presence in Canada or something like that. So it's not easy, not automatic. Now, there's a couple of ways of getting around this that we found. Some companies don't realize that just having a trademark for Canada would allow them to buy a .ca. Some companies also work closely with Canadian distributors who will then buy that .ca on their behalf and use it, although not own it, and so on. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get around this and have legitimately purchased this .ca. If it absolutely cannot do that, then you will probably have to have a subdomain name, so a .com/.ca or a .com.ca, which, if you put the coding in correctly, works pretty well for Google also. And I think the best option is obviously the top one, which is a .ca. If you cannot buy that, .com.ca works fine if you're good on the coding of your website, especially. And as I said, buying that .ca is not automatic. You have to have some kind of link into Canada to prove that you have an established reason to buy that. But there's lots of different ways. It's not just having a Canadian subsidiary. There are other ways of doing it as well. For example, trademarks, as I said. So that answers about 5 or 6 questions in one. There's a couple of other questions about marketing and whether you have to do the whole marketing or you can just do SEO. Of course, as I think as Samantha wanted to highlight with that case study from Roll-Rite, the important thing is to choose which resources work best for you in a Canadian market and which ones will get the best returns. The worst is spreading yourself too thin or starting something that you're not going to follow up on. So have one blog and then never update it. You know, everyone's been to the website that you go on latest news and there's something from 2017. This is not really good practice. So make sure you really focus and just get those activities and those resources that have the best returns for you. Right, I'm going to ask a couple of other questions then. I've got one for, I tell you what, Andrew, how about this? Can I find out more about the STEP grants from IBT Online? Andrew, can we tell people about STEP grants?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a great question to learn more about STEP grants and some of the grant allocations that are available for companies. STEP grants are something that we work with other state development, state trade agencies. Just to give an example, I am in Michigan, so I work with the MEDC, which is the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, and we're able to find different STEP grants. They're able to subsidize for some of these programs like website localization and online digital marketing for companies. For example, Samantha in Florida, she works with the EFI, which is the Enterprise Florida, and they use a different type of grant system to subsidize for some of these programs. So just to say, every state trade agency does their own STEP grant funds towards this specific project and program. But typically the most common form that we see is going to be a $6,000 or up to $6,000 subsidy, or 75% of the actual program cost is going to be covered through STEP with our program. So that's the one that we see most common. That's something that we see in Michigan, but it's also different than what we see in Florida. So just to get you a better idea on how to learn more, we have a page on our website. It's ibt.onl/partners. It's our partners page, and it shows our map with the 25 different state agencies that we work with. So if you click on your state, you're going to be finding your information for the financial assistance for the STEP grants, and just exactly what those costs are going to be coming out to.
Thanks, Andrew. Samantha, I'll throw one to you. Can IBT Online do the content creation for the online marketing, or should we leave this to our Canadian distributor?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we can create content. We do that for a lot of our companies, and we also work with distributors as well. So if your distributor wants to be involved in the process, even better. They know their customer base, they know who your buyer persona is or are way better than we ever could. So we'd love to include the distributors in that creative content creation as well. So it can go either way. Totally depends on your resources and your relationship with your distributor.
Thanks, Samantha. There's a question here about, are we seeing any effects from the USMCA? We're not a public organization, we're a private company, so I don't know how we would monitor that, except by saying anecdotally, we're seeing a lot of interest in Canadian and Mexican websites at the moment, and Canadian and Mexican online marketing. So clearly that's one of the top two markets at the moment that we're seeing throughout for companies at the moment of those two markets, so for US companies. So I guess that is part of the effect of the USMCA. I tell you what, Andrew, can your websites, can IBT Online help with distributor searches? Can the websites help with distributor searches? Yeah,
of course. Our websites are mainly built for really a variety of things, and recruitment, distributor recruitment being one of them. Other than that, we find a lot of our customers and clients looking for brand awareness, looking to further their lead generation, make more international sales. But finding different distributors through that distributor recruitment is one of the main tools that we see. And basically the way that we're able to create that is through creating landing pages for distributors, creating forms that they can fill out in their localized languages, in the language that they speak, and utilizing the market lingo that they're used to. So ultimately, this becomes a very nice sales tool for those distributors. And at the end of the day, you find, or we find that these companies are finding the best distributors in that region because they see a company that cares about their region. They see a company that cares about the market that they're in, and just put the time and the effort into creating a localized website so that they can use it as a sales tool. Suzanne, I think you're on mute.
So I am. We promised we'd get you back to your desks within an hour, so I'm going to sort of wrap it up now. There's a couple of other outstanding questions, but we will get back to you by email if we haven't answered them here. I would ask you just finally, if you enjoyed this, could you please just fill out a little questionnaire at the end? That'd be really helpful. And we do look forward to seeing you all on next webinars, e-commerce, about online marketing, about other business development tools that are online. And thank you all so much for attending. We really appreciate it. Stay safe, stay well, keep trading, and see you online, if not in person soon, we hope. Thank you all so much. Okay, bye, take care, bye.